Fantasy fanfiction. Fairy tale world. Inherit the sin of pride at the beginning. Chapter 21. Sir, you can't use these many matches. Besides, my matches are very cheap and don't cost so much. The girl in red stretched out her cold and trembling hands, carefully picking up the gold coin, which was several times more valuable than all her belongings put together. There was indescribable longing in his eyes. If she had this gold coin, she could spend this winter well. No need to live in a cold slum with drafty rooms on several sides, thinking about what to eat for the next meal. Although he was extremely longing in his heart, he still firmly handed the gold coin back to Rhodes. I gave you this one to buy matches. Rhodes did not reach out, but instead took out another gold coin from his pocket. As for this one, it is my reward for your honesty. Rhodes handed all 2 gold coins into the girl's hands. Take the basket of exquisitely packaged matches. Beautiful matches. In my eyes they are worth more than 2 gold coins. He looked at the girl who was hesitant to speak. Rhodes smiled and comforted. This money is just a meal to me. Even the waiter in the tavern will give a few gold coins as a reward when I am in a good mood. If you feel you can't live with it, just use the extra money to help those poor orphans like you. Too much money can sometimes lead to disaster and covetousness. He gave her 2 gold coins so that the girl could spend the winter well. If he gave her a bag of gold coins, the girl in red would probably not survive the night. He once offered a gold coin in a tavern, which aroused the greed of 2 adventurers. There are many people who would take risks for a bag of gold. Sir, you are a good man. My name is Brittany, and I will always remember your kindness today. Brittany held 2 gold coins in her hands, her face full of gratitude. Rhodes waved his hand and walked towards the hotel with a basket of matches. This kind gentleman, although I don't know why you are helping her, for the sake of your own life, I advise you to stay away from this girl in the future. When passing by a tailor shop, a middle-aged woman sitting at the door doing nothing persuaded her in a low voice. According to what you said, getting too close to her will put your life in danger. Rhodes paused and became interested. He felt that the owner of the tailor shop might know some secrets that he didn't know. This girl is cursed by the devil. She is destined to live a life of poverty and hunger, and anyone who comes near her will suffer misfortune. Tell me carefully. Rhodes had a look on his face that said he wanted to hear more. The owner of the tailor shop didn't want to meddle in other people's business. But after Rhodes took out a gold coin, his expression immediately became more enthusiastic. There was no way, he really gave too much, and it was impossible to refuse. Facts have proven that you can really do anything you want with money. This little girl's parents died very early. She grew up with her grandmother. Her grandmother also died a few years ago. The little girl makes a living by selling matches. Many people saw how pitiful she was and couldn't help but help her. At first, she was nothing special. Many people liked this sensible child. But soon something strange happened. No matter how much money she had on her, she would be lost. It was not stolen, but disappeared inexplicably. Moreover, those who help her will have all kinds of accidents around them, ranging from being very unlucky to having their hands and feet broken in severe cases. Tisk. What is this called? The evil star in the fairy tale world. Any fool can see that there must be something wrong here. No one told her about this. I told her, but it was of no use. She would forget about it every other day. The owner of the tailor shop shook his head helplessly. It would be nice if you told me it would be useful. Did you forget it, or did someone deliberately delete this memory? Rhodes rubbed his chin. What kind of thing can have the ability to tamper with other people's memories and thoughts at will? Except for some rare deformed mutants. It seems that the most famous one is the devil. Although there is only one word difference between devil and devil, they are indeed 2 completely different races. The latter lives on blood and destruction, and is known for its weirdness and evil. The former is more like a businessman. It's just a group of profiteers. The devil is good at playing with other people's minds and weaving various contract traps until the target willingly walks into his trap step by step. The only thing that is the same is that the devil and the demon's favorite thing are souls. However, demons like souls filled with hatred and fear. The devil's taste is more picky. Relatively speaking, he prefers high-quality souls that are rare in number. First it was the devil, now it's the devil's turn. Where the fart is bigger, there will be a lot of trouble. The corners of Rhodes' mouth raised slightly. This was interesting. He stretched out and walked in the direction of the hotel. He didn't care what his conspiracy was, let's talk about it tomorrow. In the face of absolute strength, any conspiracy is just a decoration. Back at the hotel, the lights in the room were dim. Euphemia, dressed in pajamas, sat on the edge of the bed with her head lowered, waiting for the demonic energy from her master to purify her. Stirring fingers, nervous mood, and even a little anticipation in my heart. The demonic energy in your body has been almost purified. The remaining demonic energy is hidden deeply and is very stubborn and difficult to remove. Rhodes checked the remaining demonic energy in Euphemia's body and said in a deep voice with a straight face. Euphemia was slightly flustered. This was the first time she saw her master with such a serious expression. Then, what should we do? Nowadays, it is difficult to cure the residual evil energy in your body by just using ordinary purification methods. It is best to treat it both internally and externally. During external physical therapy, you can also take holy water internally to exorcise demons. Taking holy water internally. Euphemia's eyes widened. Although he didn't quite understand, he was filled with shock. Holy water is not sprinkled inside and outside the body, how can it be taken internally? Yes, taking holy water has the effect of exorcising demons. Rhodes said seriously. Fountain of life equals holy spring. The spring water of the fountain of life equals holy water. He took the fountain of life, so he equals holy fountain. A standard formula was automatically converted into a set of formulas in his mind, and Rhodes' confidence in completely purifying the demonic energy increased a lot. After taking the fountain of life, he is no longer what he used to be. You must now kneel on the ground with a devout heart and pray. Rhodes directs Euphemia in the most correct way of purification. In this world, there are gods, and if you are pious enough, the gods will naturally send you blessings. I wonder if the sun is considered a god. Rhodes thought about it and felt that he should be considered a kind of god. Gods, holy water, and the need to purify evil spirits are all there. Be good, open your mouth. Sign in. Open black lens bracket ding. Sign in successfully. Close black lens bracket. Reward. The 10 Commandments true. The commandment of truth. Those who tell lies and break promises will be petrified. Close black lens bracket. Another very targeted commandment. Rhodes scratched his head and got up from the bed. The commandments of truth are powerful, but only against those who lie and break their promises. This commandment is of no use if you meet a person who does not lie. More importantly, people who hold this commandment cannot make others lie through verbal coaxing. Because the true commandments are also valid for yourself. Overall evaluation, useless. It can't be said that it is useless, it can only be said that it is of no use during combat. Unless the enemy gives you a chance to escape. After getting dressed, she looked at Euphemia who fell asleep after a night of purification. Although the process is a bit tiring, the purification results are still good. After a few more courses of purification, the evil spirit will almost be eliminated. On the street, a girl in red clothes was still selling her matches hard. Sir, it's you. Brittany had a huge smile on her face when she saw Rhodes. Do you still have the gold coins I gave you? Rhodes asked, rubbing his chin. Lost. Brittany looked sad. Sure enough, as expected. Rhodes rubbed his chin and took out 2 more gold coins from his pocket, still in the basket. From now on, I will keep all your matches. Gold coins disappear. It doesn't matter, he doesn't have much of anything, he just has a lot of gold coins. He really wanted to see what was behind it. Without giving the little girl a chance to refuse, Rhodes waved his hand and left with a basket of matches. Let me see what you have got. Rhodes took out a box of matches and struck a spark. Watching the match disappear in the firelight, there was a hint of contempt in his eyes. Anyone who comes close to this little girl will suffer disaster. He really didn't believe this evil. If he really has this ability, let him see it. He had just taken 2 steps when a flower pot above his head suddenly fell down. It hit Rhodes straight on the head. The huge flower pot was half a person's height. If an ordinary person was hit by the flower pot, both lives would be lost. Before the fallen flower pot landed on his head, it turned into ashes and floated away in the terrifying heat. Then, at the corner of the street, a speeding carriage rushed over. Quickly give way. My horse won't obey you. The groom on the carriage pulled hard on the reins, seeing that the violent horse was about to hit Rhodes. The groom couldn't help but close his eyes, as if he could already imagine the scene of blood splattering everywhere. Zylulu. The fierce horse with red eyes neighed. The struggling head was held down by Rhodes with one hand, making it difficult to move. Beast, do you also want to be my enemy? Rhodes glanced over, his golden pupils burning with fire. The violent horse suddenly became quiet, kneeling down on the front knee, looking at Rhodes with a hint of fear in his eyes. Is this the only way? Rhodes looked at the sky expressionlessly, with undisguised arrogance in his cold expression. He really thought highly of this guy who didn't even dare to show his face. I originally wanted to leave today, but it seems I can only delay for 2 days. Now that I am leaving in despair, I always feel like I am holding a breath in my heart. At least, we have to deal with the demon hiding behind her and the ghost spying on Brittany. Only then could he exhale the breath in his heart. Who is the prey and who is the hunter? Then we have to see who is stronger. If there is one, it's best not to let me find it. As long as he finds it, he will die. Rhodes walked around the castle and found a black market in a remote corner. A place like the black market is nothing more than slave trading and other things that are not on the table. Rhodes walked around but couldn't find anything of interest. Although there were many slave traders, most of them sold coolies and serfs. There are always only a few slaves with outstanding looks like that. Of course, the price of such coolie slaves is relatively cheap. You can buy one for a dozen or 20 gold coins. Rhodes even saw a slave trader selling magical creatures. There were a few goblins obtained from who knows where, and a kobold. Goblins reproduce quickly, but their strength is not very good. They are timid and bully the weak and fear the strong. However, they also have a distant relative called the Dark Goblin. Compared with ordinary goblins, dark goblins are more bloodthirsty and cruel, and they like to prey on females of other races for reproduction. It can be regarded as a group where everyone shouts and beats. As for the kobolds, they are a branch of the orc clan. They are hardworking and good at mining. They are all worthless things, but the price is a little more expensive than ordinary slaves. After all, in the Northern Kingdom, the number of such monsters is still quite rare. It is somewhat of a rarity. There's no one selling elves either. Rhodes clicked his tongue. The elves have a long lifespan and are famous for their beauty. They are one of the favorite slaves of all nobles. Unfortunately, the elves are scarce in number and powerful, and most of them live in the forest of elves and never go out. Even if there are slave traders who risk their lives and run to the elf forest to capture the elves, there are only a few who can catch the elves. Therefore, the number of elven slaves circulating in the market is very scarce. Once it appears, it will be auctioned off by the nobles at a large price. If you want to get an elf slave, besides having money, the most important thing is luck. Of course, he can also go to the elf forest to capture it himself. But considering the distance of the elf forest, Rhodes gave up the idea. The location of the elf forest is on the border between the northern kingdoms and the southern kingdoms. To reach the elf forest, you need to traverse the entire northern kingdoms. Just thinking about it made him feel big. However, owning an elf slave is indeed every man's biggest dream. King Haemon's new clothes have been made. I heard that he will parade around the castle tomorrow to show off his new clothes. I don't know what to show for a shabby dress. Leaving the black market, the streets were filled with civilians discussing Count Haemon's new clothes. Anyway, this Earl has done more than one stupid thing. Most people were used to it, only Rhodes felt something was wrong. This time is a bit too coincidental. Snowing. Suddenly, a snowflake fell from before my eyes. This year's snow came 2 months early. Feeling the biting cold wind, Rhodes seemed to be able to think about it. This night will be extremely cold. All the filth will be covered with snow. It was dark. Snowflakes covered the ground. There was an icy chill in the air. The little girl in thin clothes was huddled in the corner and shivering. The gold coin given by Mr. Nice Guy has been lost again. Brittany, why are you so useless? Looking at the square buildings that shone with light and warmth, Brittany's eyes flashed with envy. With trembling hands, he took out the last box of matches from his pocket. Wow! The flame lit up, bringing some warmth. Soon, this faint warmth slowly disappeared. The desire for warmth made Brittany light the second match. Burnt-out sticks were piled all over the floor, and there was only one match left in the box. With trembling blue fingers, he lit the last match. In the flickering firelight, steady footsteps sounded. Brittany raised her gray eyes and looked through the flames toward the direction of the sound. In the darkness, a white-haired old man walked slowly. With a loving smile on his face, he slowly stretched out a hand towards her. "My good boy, what do you wish for?" "Grandmother." Brittany muttered softly, her eyes gradually blurring. "I want, to a place where there is no hunger or cold." "Good boy, then sign this contract." The kind grandmother smiled and took out a parchment and handed it to the girl. Under the flickering oil lamp, the old man's shadow seemed a little distorted. "Sign it. After signing it, you will be away from all pain and hunger. Grandma will take you to a world without pain." The light and fluttering voice was filled with indescribable bewitchment. The girl, whose vision was blurry, raised her fingers tremblingly. "I just said, who would shamelessly embarrass a poor child? It turns out to be the devil." A light voice sounded. The kind smile on Grandma's face slowly disappeared. He slowly looked behind him. Rhodes, who was wearing a fur cloak, was half leaning against the wall, looking at the big and small with a smile. "Gentlemen." Brittany's confused eyes regained consciousness, and she was obviously a little surprised to see Rhodes. "I subconsciously wanted to introduce it. This is my grandma, she." Brittany's voice paused and suddenly she heard that her grandmother had died a few years ago. "She's dead, right?" Rhodes twitched the corner of his mouth and looked at the expressionless old woman. "Why, you haven't revealed your true identity yet. Do you want me to do it myself?" The expression on the old woman's face gradually turned ferocious, and she looked at Rhodes with a vicious expression. "Human, I shouldn't have offended you, right? No, I just feel a little uncomfortable with people bullying children." Rhodes shrugged. "There is nothing to do with you here. Leave now. I will treat you as if you never showed up." The old woman's tone was cold and filled with unspeakable threats. "Are you threatening me?" The smile on Rhodes' face slowly disappeared, and a violent power gradually emerged from his body. "I'm not threatening, just a friendly warning." The devil's voice softened slightly. "This child has nothing to do with you, so why bother making an enemy of me for an outsider? As long as you don't interfere, you will be a friend of our devil clan." "Sounds very tempting." Rhodes raised his eyebrows in disbelief, looking at the devil in human skin with a playful look. "But are you worthy of negotiating terms with me? Get lost now. I'll pretend you never showed up. If you don't get lost, just stay here." The devil's voice suddenly became deeper. "Then you and this little girl will become my collection together. Call." A pair of huge bat wings emerged from the back, and the human body was torn apart from the inside by a pair of sharp claws. A devil, covered in flesh and blood without skin, with flames coming out of his head, crawled out of his shell. There are two huge long horns on its head, and a flame is swaying at the end of its tail behind it. The bat wings spread out, and an overwhelming shadow enveloped the entire box. The devil looked at Rhodes with ferocious eyes. "Wait a moment. Do you regret it? Then get out of here. I just want to make sure that if I don't get out, don't you want to share life and death with me here, and only one of you can leave alive?" Rhodes asked in an incomprehensible tone. Although creatures like devils have weird abilities, they are not as powerful as demons. Compared with strength, what they are better at is conspiracy. Of course, he is most famous for his means of escape. If a devil wants to escape, he can't stop him now. The devil rolled his eyes, and a trace of treachery flashed in his eyes. "That's right, I'm going to decide this little girl's soul. If you don't get out, only one of you and I will be able to leave here alive. If you're scared, get out of here right now." They devils are not those reckless devils. They are playing with their brains. If they can solve problems without fighting, why do they have to work so hard? What's more, it can't be sure of this guy's strength. If it encounters a tough situation, it will be the one that suffers. It would be great if you could scare him away. Your words are enough, now we can start fighting. Rhodes twitched the corners of his mouth, and his bright smile made the devil feel inexplicably tingly. "I always felt like something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it for a while." Hunting. Rhodes was well prepared, but he had no intention of arguing with this devil anymore. With a flick of his finger, the magic power of robbery was activated. The devil felt that he had been tricked, and his face was full of anger. I was about to get angry, but I felt my strength disappearing rapidly. It was as if it had been snatched away from the body by a pair of invisible hands. Language, mind, confusion, space, distortion, hallucination, disaster. Your devil's power is really complicated. Looking at the astonished and frightened devil, Rhodes slowly stretched. Aha! The figure flashed, like a hunting cheetah, appearing in front of the devil. Punch out hard. The devil's eyes were dazzled, he could barely keep up with his speed, and raised his hands to resist. As a result, he was directly knocked away by a terrifying force. Like a dead body, it fell against the wooden pole on the roadside. Tap tap tap. Under the light, the shadows lengthened. Rhodes walked towards him slowly and leisurely with a pressing step. We agreed that only one person can leave alive, so don't run away. Devil. Grinning, his 2 rows of sharp teeth made the devil shiver. Who is the devil between the two of them? Human, you are so stupid. I am the devil. Lies and cunning are my nature. How can I keep my promise with you, a human? The devil climbed up and taunted loudly. Spreading a pair of wings, he flew directly into the sky. This human being is too evil. If he continues to fight, he will definitely die. It's better to sneak away first. The devil randomly found a direction and flew over at the fastest speed in his life. This stupid human being will come back to you sooner or later when my power is restored. The devil fled quickly, looking at the castle behind him with hatred in his eyes. Strange, why did your body suddenly become so heavy? Suddenly, the devil felt his speed slow down, and then his body gradually became stiff. No, why can't I move? The devil, filled with fear, couldn't help but glance down. Only a trace of grayish-white was seen, spreading upward from the sole of the foot. Within a few breaths, the gray color had spread to his wings. The demon, whose wings were completely petrified, fell from the sky in despair. Snapped. A crisp sound. The petrified body was torn apart. Why bother when you were seeking your own death? Rhodes stood there, looking at the devil that was smashed into pieces, and shook his head in pity. By lying and breaking promises in front of him, do you really think that his true commandments are just a show? There is no hope, he is dead. There are no corpses, just bury them. Is it okay? Rhodes took off his fur cloak and covered the girl's body. The warm cloak gradually warmed Brittany's cold body. I'm fine, Mr. Rhodes. Brittany, who was in shock, shook her head, her eyes a little disappointed. She thought she saw her grandmother, but she didn't expect it to be the devil in disguise. The devil's cunning and hypocrisy are well known. If it hadn't been for Rhodes, she might have sold her soul to the devil. However, the devil was not lying to her. If the devil takes away her soul, she will naturally not feel the pain and cold. Why don't you go home? Rhodes frowned. It's unbearable to think of wandering alone outside in such cold weather. I don't have a home anymore. Brittany shook her head. Rhodes understood immediately. Places like slums are places of chaos and helplessness. This winter came too suddenly. In order to survive, people in the slums can only steal supplies from other people. This little girl must have been kicked out of her home. Just follow me from now on. Rhodes thought about it and decided to take the little girl away. A pure and flawless soul may not appear even in 100,000 people. In the eyes of devils and demons, this child is a delicious piece of meat. I don't know how many devils will secretly covet her soul. If left here, he probably wouldn't survive to adulthood. Thank you, sir. It is my greatest luck to be your slave. Brittany's face was filled with gratitude. Slave. Rhodes raised his eyebrows, wondering if this little girl had misunderstood something. However, he didn't bother to explain. With him, it makes no difference whether you are a slave or not. He is not a slave owner from the old days who would exploit slave labor. Taking Brittany out of the alley, a figure suddenly blocked the way. Give that child to me. A low, magnetic voice with an indescribable temptation. A woman with her hair tied back stepped out of the shadow of the oil lamp. Wearing a fiery red dress with a deep V-neck design on the chest, it barely covered her vitals. The lower body is a pair of black leather pants, black stockings with python-like patterns, and a pair of red high heels. The woman is beautiful and has a completely Western face. She has a perfect figure, proud breasts, a perky butt, and especially a pair of impeccably beautiful legs that are even more eye-catching. Are you ordering me? Rhodes squinted his eyes, his cold eyes gleaming with danger. Although I am amazed by the woman's dress. That beautiful and charming temperament, bold and slightly revealing clothing, this was the first time he had seen such a wild woman since he traveled through time. However, no one in this world is qualified to dominate him. So what? The woman pursed her lips and smiled slightly. The fiery red hair burned like a flame, the enchanting eyes narrowed slightly, and the whole body was enveloped in a violent flame element. The look in Rhodes's eyes was full of provocation and temptation. Then let's see if you have the strength to take someone away from me. Rhodes touched his nose but said nothing. The arrogance in his calm eyes was like looking at an ant. Arrogant man. The woman snorted coldly, and her aura suddenly became violent. Then I will cripple you and then take you away. Without any warning, the woman suddenly went all offensive. The violent flame power boiled and turned into a huge fire dragon, engulfing Rhodes. Are all fire mages such irritable characters? Looking at the woman who got into a fight over a disagreement, Rhodes looked slightly speechless. Boom! The flame turned into a dragon and swallowed Rhodes whole. This guy, why don't you hide? The woman frowned, and the power of the flame slowly weakened. It's a very hot flame. Rhodes shook his burned arm, and the black marks on his skin turned into new flesh at a speed visible to the naked eye. This exaggerated resilience. Seeing that she recovered so quickly, the woman's face showed a slight look of surprise. This level of resilience is rare even in those powerful magical creatures. Let alone a human being. What the hell are you? Me. Just one person. Rhodes stretched his muscles and extended a hand to the woman with cold eyes. A man who stands at the pinnacle of all races. Hunting. The magic of robbery. Arrogant guy, what a loud tone. The woman snorted coldly. She had never seen such an arrogant guy before. Standing at the pinnacle of all races. I am afraid that only the gods dare to have such a loud tone. The next second, the woman's expression changed. What did you do to me? She felt that the magic power in her body was like a dam that had opened its gates, flowing out continuously. In the blink of an eye, half of the magic power disappeared. Of course, let me borrow your power. Rhodes grinned wildly. Violent magic power surged in the body, and fiery red lines appeared on the skin, as if magma-like magic power flowed in the lines. With a wave of his hand, the flame elements gathered together and turned into a flame windbreaker draped around his body. Since you can hurt me, I'll try not to make your loss too ugly. He is empowered by the commandment of loving kindness. No one with hatred or malice can harm him. This woman can hurt him, so naturally she cannot be treated as an ordinary enemy. Boom! The violent flames exploded, and the expression on the woman's face was ugly. The stronger the person, the harder it is to defeat himself. What she is encountering now is this embarrassing situation. Her power is too strong, and even she can barely resist it. The current battle is about each other's strength, to see who can consume the other's magic power first. However, this guy used the power he stole from her, and in the end she was the only one who suffered. Use my power against me, you shameful thief. Whoever has the power, that's his power. Don't you think it's too ugly to say this now? Rhodes leisurely cast powerful spells one after another. The terrifying magic power fluctuations rendered the sky above the entire castle bright. Naturally, he wrested these magic powers from this woman. Tell me your purpose proactively, or wait until I trample you under my feet and then give me an honest explanation. Rhodes asked with a smile. If this woman doesn't cooperate, he doesn't mind crushing her pride in person and then listening to her explain. Asshole. The woman took a deep breath and suddenly stopped all attacks. She knew that if she continued to fight like this, she would definitely lose. This man's power is just too shameless. Upon seeing this, Rhodes also restrained the raging fire magic power on his body. I am Yulia, the legendary mage worshipped by the Shinra Empire. I came here to follow the guidance of the prophet and find someone. She is my destined disciple. The woman looked at Brittany, who looked timid. Prophet. He knew this. There are gods spreading faith in this world. In addition to the god of glory, there are also various powerful gods. For example, the god of death who can harvest souls and decide the life and death of all living beings. The god of life who governs life. The goddess of fertility who makes all things harvest abundant and plants grow and bloom. Among them, there are some mysterious gods with few followers but powerful powers. Such as the Lord of Pale and Mist, the god of justice and contractual judgment, and the three goddesses of fate. Believers who believe in the god of destiny, if their intuition is strong enough, will be given the ability to peek into the future by the three goddesses of fate. Such people are also called prophets. However, the predicted future is not fixed or certain. Peering into the future is like peering into the fog to see the direction of the world. The future that a prophet can peek into is only the most likely one among countless futures. It is very likely that in the development of a certain future timeline, Brittany will become Yulia's disciple. However, this is not an inevitable result. Just like he is now preventing Brittany from being accepted as a disciple by this woman, this future will naturally be denied. However, Rhodes does not decide other people's future hobbies without authorization. He looked at Brittany next to him. What do you think? I am Master Rhodes's slave, and I obey Master in everything. Brittany's little eyes were firm. It is natural that he has taken his status as a slave. Although Rhodes didn't admit it, in her heart, she was now Lord Rhodes' slave. This kind man saved her soul from the devil. She willingly became Lord Rhodes' slave. If she follows you, she will only waste her talent. If she becomes my disciple, I will train her to be the most outstanding flame mage. Yulia couldn't help but speak. She didn't want such an outstanding mage seed to be buried here. According to the prophet's prediction, this child will be the most powerful flame mage in the Shinra Empire in the future. Rhodes touched his chin and glanced at Brittany, who was staring blankly. A pair of bright eyes full of longing. Any poor person living at the bottom of society cannot resist the temptation to become a mage. Once you become a mage, it means that you will enter the aristocratic class and completely start a new life. Especially after seeing the legendary peak fighting power between Rhodes and Yulia. The seeds of desire for power have long been buried in my heart. Although what you said makes sense, why do you think you can teach me better than me? Rhodes rubbed his chin. A good-for-nothing mage who couldn't even beat him at night said he could teach better disciples than him. It feels like a student who graduated from Pheasant University says that he knows better about studying than top students from Tsinghua University and Peking University. For the sake of my good mood, get out of here. Rhodes said lazily. He was confident that if this kid stayed by his side, he would be able to crush this so-called legend sooner or later. Incomprehensible. Yulia's face turned red with anger. How could you decide her future so selfishly? Only the imperial capital is her stage. Rhodes ignored her. This is her decision, and it is also my decision. As for you, go wherever you need to go. Imperial capital. The cradle of the strong. A group of trash who can't even resist a finger of his. If they hang out with this kind of trash for a long time, they will only become trash. That's right, strength does not equal ability. Although he can't teach students, he has many ways to make this child stronger. The worst-case scenario is to tie up a mage to help him teach his students. Isn't it the same as the mage he kidnapped to teach the students and himself teaching the students? Rhodes thought, looking at Yulia who looked angry. Rubbing his chin, his eyes gradually became weird. What are you looking at? Yulia was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. It was really the look in this guy's eyes that made her feel offended. I suddenly changed my mind. Rhodes moved his shoulders and slowly extended his fingers forward. You should stay as a tool for me. Hunting. Take by force. Mean. Half a quarter of an hour later, Yulia was completely subdued, bruised and swollen, tied into a ball, stuffed with a ball of socks in her mouth and thrown into the corner. Just now, was that the power of the legendary mage to fight. In the palace, a tall and thin figure looked at the light in the castle. Under the light, there was a pale and thin face, with golden hair slightly rolled up, and pupils glowing with turbid scarlet. A man dressed as a tailor picked up a pair of sharp scissors and cut out the skin of the unknown creature in front of him. Skillfully sewn onto another piece of skin. Vaguely, the skins of countless different monsters pieced together into a twisted demon body. Hurry, hurry. Looking at the work that only the last step was left to complete, the tailor's eyes were filled with madness. Tomorrow at noon, my lord will come to this world. Everything will be shrouded in the glory of my lord. The god of glory. The evil god will definitely be expelled by the glory of my lord. What a legendary mage. Under the glory of the Lord, everything is vain. Only pain lasts forever. And he, as the priest of the evil god, will become the new ruler of this world ruled by demons. Tailor, how are you preparing the Earl's new clothes? Tomorrow, the Earl will show off this dress in front of all his subjects, so there must be no mistakes. A palace guard walked over with an arrogant expression. He didn't seem to notice anything in the house. The feverish expression on the tailor's face returned to normal, revealing a meek and humble expression. Please rest assured, Lord Earl, the dress is basically ready. There will definitely be no accidents tomorrow. However, there is still something missing. Looking at the troubled tailor, the guard frowned slightly. Why am I only remembering such a crucial thing now? There must be no flaws in the Earl's dress. If anything is missing, I will have someone look for it right away. It's not something important. It just lacks some souls full of pain and hatred as sacrifices for the coming of our Lord. Puff. The guard, whose face was filled with fear, fell into a pool of blood. The tailor wiped the dagger in his hand expressionlessly. Kill everyone in the entire palace, and you should be able to collect the sacrifices for my lord. As for the untouchables in this castle, let them be the first gift after my lord's arrival. The tailor sighed. It's a pity that that guy Jack was killed. Otherwise, there would be no need for him to take action himself. That mage, since you killed my servant, use your own body to compensate. That night, the palace was filled with the pungent smell of blood. The devil's body soaked in blood became even more strange and ferocious, as if it might come back to life at any time. If you want me to let go, you must swear to me that you will not leave secretly. In the hotel, Rhodes crossed his legs. Yulia was tied into a rice dumpling on the ground in front of her, flopping on the ground like a maggot. As for why she was tied up like this, it was nothing more than familiarity. You will know it if you watch too much. When I kidnap someone, I subconsciously tie them like this. You're dreaming. Yulia struggled wildly, and with the intensity of her struggle, the special rope structure deeply bound her body. Why are you sweating so much? Rhodes asked strangely. If there was a hole in the ground right now, she would definitely crawl into it. Yulia lowered her head, her face full of shame and indignation, and she felt completely powerless. What kind of person would create this method of tying ropes? This is indeed not a good person. If you don't swear, then I will have to tie you up like this. Rhodes spread his hands helplessly, his eyes sweeping over that perfect body. The body that is more prominent due to the rope art seems to have a special temptation. What do you want to do? Yulia looked nervously at Rhodes, who suddenly stood up and walked over. What does a woman with such a hot temper look like in bed? Rhodes muttered quietly just enough for Yulia to hear. I have to say that this woman is indeed a stunner. If it can be purified, it should be very comfortable. Seeing Rhodes extending his sinful hand, Yulia was completely panicked. She just came out to take in a disciple, but she never thought she would lose her virginity here. She is a legendary mage from the Shinra Empire. How dare this guy insult her like this? I swear I will never leave secretly until I defeat you. Rhodes' fingers stayed within a finger's distance of Yulia's chest. He glanced at the nervous woman and slowly stretched out his hand. If you had been so obedient earlier, it would have been fine. Rhodes casually released Yulia's bound body with a wave of his hand. It's really a bit sin-inducing to be tied up so beautifully. Aren't you afraid that I could sneak away? After being released, Yulia looked at Rhodes in surprise. Did this guy trust her so much? You can try. Rhodes glanced at her. Even the legendary mage was nothing more than an ant in front of the discipline. If you're not afraid of turning into a stone statue, feel free to give it a try. Just try it. Is there such a good thing? Yulia's eyes flashed, not knowing whether this guy was serious or joking. But you can try it. Regardless of whether it was true or not, there was no loss to her anyway. Turn around and walk directly outside. After taking just 2 steps, a grayish-gray color emerged from the soles of his feet, and his legs instantly turned to stone. What is this? Yulia, who was almost completely petrified, had lingering fear on her face. This power is so weird that it even touches the realm of rules. With her legendary magic power, she has no ability to resist. Rule. That is the power exclusive to the gods, and only the gods are qualified to touch it. If you break your promise to me, you will be petrified. You can think of this as a curse. Rhodes snapped his fingers, and the true power of commandment that had spread to Yulia was suppressed. When the commandment is activated, even he cannot violate the power of the commandment. But he can turn off the power of the commandments. He doesn't want to be punished by his own power just for bragging. Doesn't that mean you hired a father for yourself? That would be too silly. If you break your promise, you will be petrified. Yulia stood there with dull eyes, completely unable to accept this reality. Doesn't that mean that she will stay with this guy for the rest of her life? There is no way to leave until this guy is defeated. So, you should stay here honestly. You don't want to teach students, Brittany will be left to you to teach from now on. Rhodes said generously. After finally catching a free labor force, you still want to run away. Just lie down for me. Yulia was silent. She wanted to struggle, but her strength did not allow it. This guy's abilities were so weird that she had no chance to resist. Since you were there at the beginning, why didn't you take action? Rhodes suddenly asked strangely. The timing of this woman's appearance was so coincidental that it was hard for him to believe that she had just arrived. A person with high moral standards will not be attracted by the temptation of the devil. I am testing her will. Yulia said matter-of-factly. Sabi. Rhodes really didn't know how to describe this kind of stupidity. This kind of brain circuit is a bit too novel. From the perspective of an aristocratic person with a privileged life, the temptation of the devil is of course a test of human nature and morality. But for an ordinary person living at the bottom of society, it is understandable to yearn for a better life. The living environment is different, and the thoughts and ideas are of course different. Why not eat minced meat? Teach Brittany well, or I will purify you. And drinking holy water, of course. Holy water. Can I drink this too? A trace of doubt flashed across Yulia's face. Aren't those magicians in the Holy Church all using this thing to immerse and baptize newborns? Although she didn't like being threatened, she was willing to teach Brittany magic. As long as she defeats this, Brittany will still be her disciple sooner or later. The best fire mage of the future. The light of morning dispelled the last trace of darkness. As expected, I still prefer the daytime. Rhodes stretched, his bones making a series of faint popping sounds. A magic power as hot as the sun spread out from the body. Even Rita the divine axe cannot completely suppress it. This guy's breath. Yulia, who was teaching Brittany basic meditation, glanced inadvertently. The pupils suddenly shrank slightly. In her eyes, Rhodes at this moment was like a sun that had just risen. Blazing. Dazzling. The whole body exudes powerful magic that people can't look directly at. The magic power, which was like substance, swept like a storm, almost condensing into a sun. In other words, he is a walking sun. How could there be such a huge change? Yulia's body trembled slightly. She is a legendary mage who masters fire, and fire and the sun are subordinate to each other. Therefore, she can feel the absolute gap in strength more than others. That kind of suffocating oppression comes from the contempt of the superiors for the inferiors. It was like an arrogant sun king sitting on the throne, casting a glance at the flames of the mortal world. Even when facing the Holy Pope, who was known as the strongest man in the empire, she never felt this powerless. Such a gap in absolute strength. It makes people unable to resist at all. Yulia's heart was pounding, she took a deep breath and turned her head. In my arrogant heart, I felt a long-awaited desire to surrender. Yulia's heart was pounding, she took a deep breath and turned her head. In my arrogant heart, I felt a long-awaited desire to surrender. What's wrong with you, your face is so red? Rhodes, shirtless, stretched lazily. The body exudes a strong masculine atmosphere, like a work of art created by the best sculptor in the world. Every muscle line has an indescribable beauty. Looking at Yulia, who looked unnatural, Rhodes frowned slightly. Asked a little strangely. Yulia glanced at his upper body, and she felt inexplicably anxious just by looking at him. He slapped his face and coughed dryly to hide his embarrassment. It's okay, I just feel a little hot. Hot? Are you okay? Rhodes glanced at the sun that had just risen in the pale snow. Is there something wrong with this woman's brain? Do all fire mages have this virtue? Sign in. Rhodes shook his head and was too lazy to talk to this woman, just checking in alone. Open black lens bracket ding. Sign in successfully. Close black lens bracket. Reward. The 7 deadly sins of sloth. Magic disaster. The magic power of disaster. It can arouse the pain in people and make the wounds deteriorate rapidly. The magic of disaster. Rhodes wasn't very happy, but he couldn't say he was disappointed. After all, the effect of this magic is quite good. To sum up, a small injury turns into a big injury turns into a serious injury, and a serious injury turns into a near death. If a person is on the verge of death and is inflicted by the power of disaster, he may die immediately. In addition to injuries, disease aspects can also be affected. A small cold turns into a bad cold, and a bad cold turns into the flu. Theoretically, it is not impossible for a minor illness to turn into a terminal illness. Whether it's magic power or commandments, how you use them depends on yourself. Just like the law of love on him, it can only prevent those who hate him from hurting him. If his magic power is strong enough, the power of the law of love can be further developed to make all the hateful people around him lose the power to harm others. In other words, within the scope of his magic, all those with hatred and malice will completely lose their power. As long as we are human, there will be people and things we hate. Once this kind of thought arises, both physical power and magic power will be sealed and cannot harm others. That's why he said that the commandment of loving kindness is an almost unsolvable defense. The moment malice arose, he was already invincible. The Earl is going to show off his new clothes in the castle. All residents in the castle must arrive. There was a loud shout outside the window. A group of knights on horseback walked menacingly through the streets, and their loud voices echoed through every corner of the castle. I have long heard that Earl Haemon is an exaggerated person and loves success. I didn't expect that the reality is even more absurd than the rumors. There was a look of ridicule on Yulia's face. For a new piece of clothing, the residents of the entire castle must gather together. There is simply nothing more outrageous than this. No wonder everyone calls him Stupid Earl behind his back. Don't you feel a little strange? What's weird? Yulia frowned. Rhodes was lying against the window, a flame dancing on his fingertips, and a repulsive aura coming from him. The smile on his face was a little playful. There's something about these people that makes me feel very disgusted. Devil's breath. A group of palace guards actually have the aura of demons on their bodies, which is a bit interesting. There may be some big problem at the palace. Rhodes turned around, put on his clothes and walked out of the hotel. There are problems in the palace, so the king's new clothes may not be a simple traveling exhibition. Demon. Yulia's eyelids twitched. She is not a professional demon hunter, nor is she a believer in the Holy Church, so she does not have such a strong sense of demonic aura. What's more, these guards are just a group of puppets controlled by demonic power, and their demonic aura is very shallow. But that doesn't mean she doesn't know the importance of things. I wonder what the Earl's new clothes will look like. It must be luxurious and beautiful. After all, the Earl spent a huge price to get new clothes. Maybe this dress is made of pure gold and inlaid with various gems. Some people are full of expectations, but most people still have indifferent expressions. It's just a piece of clothing, no matter how beautiful it is, how good can it be? To put it bluntly, it was the Earl's childish mentality of showing off his toys that was causing the problem. All the castle residents gathered on both sides of the street, noisily waiting for the Count's appearance. Rhodes stood in the crowd with his arms folded, surrounded by a dense crowd. There was no one within a few meters of him. Bathed in the sun, the faint brilliance and heat spread out, and the golden eyes were indifferent. The figure is as majestic as a god, even a single glance feels like blasphemy. Let alone getting close. It's almost noon. Rhodes glanced at the blazing sun in the sky and muttered to himself. His power is tied to the state of the sun. The sun is about to reach its peak at noon. And he was about to enter the most powerful time of the day. Gain power that rivals God's. Strong power brings invincibility and arrogance. His inner nature told him not to be too arrogant. I didn't see those awesome villains because they were too arrogant and not mature enough to be cautious. That's why he was turned over and stepped on by the trash protagonist Dioc, and his lifelong reputation became the stepping stone for the male protagonist Dioc. However, there seemed to be another thought as blazing as the sun telling him in his mind. I'll make you paralyzed. In heaven and on earth, I am the only one who is supreme. Sitting on the highest throne of the sun, the arrogant Sun King, how could this world allow someone higher than the one he sits on to exist? I don't want to be so arrogant, but I am a man who can rival gods. Rhodes slowly extended a hand. He is so awesome, isn't it normal to be arrogant? Even if he wanted to be mediocre, his strength wouldn't allow it. The Earl is out. With a shout, all the eyes of the street turned to the avenue leading to the palace. As a luxurious carriage pulled by 8 fierce horses appeared, a count dressed in gorgeous clothes stood on the carriage. The entire street lost all sound in an instant. Everyone stared at the count's new clothes with dazzled expressions on their faces. This gorgeous feather fabric, full of nobility embellished with gold and precious stones. How can there be such perfect clothes in the world? If I can wear it once, even if I have to die, I will do it. A pair of passionate eyes stared at the figure on the carriage. Everyone sees a completely different picture. Some people saw jewelry all over the floor, some saw countless beauties serving them, and some saw power and status. What you see and think reflects your deepest desires and fantasies. And now, the fantasy becomes reality. Don't squeeze me, let me take another look. This is my thing, all of you, get out of here. My jewelry. Don't steal it, you fool. As the carriage passed by, the peaceful crowd rioted. Everyone fights for the unseen treasure. Bloodshed continued. Only Rhodes remained unmoved, staring intently at the carriage. What gorgeous clothes, adorned with gold, silver and precious stones. He didn't see any of it. What he saw was just a huge demon skin sewn from tens of thousands of different creature skins. It seems to be inflated and stands tall. Tentacles of flesh and blood stretched out from the skin and swung into the bodies of every civilian. Like the mouthparts of an insect, it continuously absorbs the souls and lives of these humans. The naked Earl Haman stood in front of the devil's body like an ant, controlled like a puppet by countless threads of flesh and blood. Bloody threads covered the sky of the entire castle like a spider web. Faintly, they gathered into a huge summoning ceremony. It is indeed the devil's method. Rhodes sighed softly. Where he stood, blazing fire burned. All the flesh and blood tentacles that came close were burned to death, so naturally they would not be manipulated by these illusions. A child standing next to Rhodes suddenly raised his hand and pointed at Earl Haman. He shouted with innocent eyes. Why don't you wear any clothes, Lord Earl? Silence. Deathly silence. Rhodes suddenly felt as if he was being targeted by something terrifying. All the humans who were confused by the tentacles of flesh and blood looked like machines, turning around with dull expressions. In the sky, the huge demon body lowered its head. With glowing red pupils, he stared at Rhodes. Finally found you. Finally found you. With glowing red pupils, he stared at Rhodes. The huge demon body leaned down and grabbed a terrifying hand in the direction of Rhodes. Swish, swish, swish. Densely packed red tentacles enveloped him like a dragnet. You are such a skinny person that you really think you are a devil. Rhodes drew out the divine axe behind him and swung it lightly. The blazing flames instantly swallowed up everything in sight. Boom! Rhodes stomped his toes and jumped into the air. The body floated 100 meters in the air, looking down at this behemoth. You can move by absorbing the lives and souls of others. You're just a puppet, who allowed you to look down on me. Rhodes raised the divine axe in his hand, and the blazing firelight gathered on the axe blade like a sun. Turn into ashes. As the axe fell, the sun exploded in an instant. The violent energy was unleashed unscrupulously. In an instant, the red tentacles connected to all humans were burned to ashes. The demon skin that has lost all sources of life and soul is like a toy that has lost its power. He stood there sluggishly, unable to move. And all the life and soul power absorbed by the devil's skin returned to their respective bodies. The crowd that had escaped the control of the illusion suddenly became panicked. Scattered away. What a powerful human being. Inside the palace, a 3-story demon altar, filled with an evil and bloody atmosphere. Around the altar, mountains of blood and corpses piled up. Palace ladies in luxurious clothes, armed guards and knights. There were also large numbers of slaves and civilians. An expression of pain and fear remained on each corpse's face. Blood pooled around the altar. Wailing and anguished souls struggled around the altar. The tailor stood under the altar with blood-red eyes, looking at the impact reflected in the pool of blood, with a look of surprise and fear on his face. This human being was much more powerful than he imagined. The demon body that he spent so long to put together cannot be easily solved by even a legendary powerhouse. But in front of this man, he couldn't even hold on for a single round. What a pity, you don't know what kind of existence you are facing. If it were before, he might still feel scared. But that's different now. The great Lord is about to come, and the whole world will prostrate in the glory of the Lord. Although the sacrifice is a little small, it is enough to bring down part of my Lord's power. The tailor's face was filled with enthusiasm. He held a dagger exuding a curse in his hand, with a pious expression. My Lord, your humble servant uses these flesh and soul as a sacrifice to ask for your coming. Puff! The dagger pierced the chest, and black liquid surged out like sludge. Boom! Thunder exploded. A dark vortex slowly condensed and formed in the sky. This world will eventually be shrouded in the light of the Lord. The tailor's face had a feverish expression. Summoning evil gods from the abyss is so crazy. On the street, the huge demon's skin had been burned to ashes by the power of the sun. Rhodes stepped on the pieced-together demon head and placed one hand on his hip. He used his divine axe to block the dazzling sunlight and looked at the vortex formed in the sky. The terrifying evil power almost turned half of the sky into darkness. The abyss is the gathering place of all filth. In addition to giving birth to all kinds of demons, some weird evil gods were also born. These evil gods are naturally twisted, chaotic and evil. If the devils are a group of butchers who only know how to kill and destroy, then the evil gods are a group of lunatics who are full of chaos and have almost zero thinking and reason. Their thinking is completely different from that of normal creatures, and they are synonymous with distortion, weirdness, and madness. Evil gods have no reason or alignment. They are all powerful beings who act alone. Some relatively powerful evil gods can even rival gods. Even the powerful demon lords in the abyss are not willing to play with them. Because there is no such idea of allies in the minds of these lunatics. If you cooperate with them, you will be stabbed in the back by the other party in the next second, and they will not stop fighting. Generally speaking, evil gods only live in the filthy land at the bottom of the abyss. However, occasionally there will be evil gods. By chance, their power penetrates the crystal wall layer and pollutes the world. The will and soul of creatures contaminated by the evil god's power will also be irreversibly distorted and deformed. Fanatic believers who become evil gods will try their best to summon evil gods into the world, and call this behavior spreading glory. In fact, the summoned evil god will only endlessly devour the surrounding creatures. Moreover, the evil gods themselves are like a huge source of pollution. Wherever they have existed, the surrounding environment will be assimilated by the extremely twisted power of the abyss. Become unfit for human habitation. This phenomenon will take at least hundreds to thousands of years to resolve. Moreover, areas contaminated by evil gods will become unsuitable for human survival even if they recover. Barren, cold, hot, windy sand. The instinct of evil gods will drive them to continuously absorb the power of the world's origin after their arrival. Cause irreparable damage to the world. If given a choice, Rhodes would rather face a powerful demon lord than an evil god. Although the demon lord is powerful, at least he has a brain, and most importantly, he is easy to kill. These evil gods are different. They live in the depths of the abyss, and their flesh and soul are distorted and transformed into monsters. It's easy to defeat an evil god, but it's dozens of times more difficult to kill an evil god. Roar. The weird and crazy roar of the soul echoed in his mind like overlapping echoes. A huge green tentacle emerged from the black hole, a huge tentacle hundreds of meters long, with densely twisted eyeballs engraved on it. Around the eyeballs, there are protruding veins. Wisps of tentacles of flesh and blood emerged from the corners of the eyes, twisting and dancing like long snakes. When he saw this tentacle, the name of this evil god naturally appeared in Rhodes' mind. The Lord of Pain, at #%. Chaotic and disordered symbols and language were poured into my mind, and my mind was dizzy, as if it was about to explode. This kind of creature that is close to the level of gods, its own existence is like a god, the incarnation of order and rules. Indescribable, indescribable. Just mentioning his name will cause him to be stared into the abyss, bringing endless fear. They are synonymous with fear. Rhodes glanced at the sun in the sky. The rising sun has reached its peak. The power that even the divine axe cannot suppress surges and collides in the body like a rushing river. Rhodes let go of the shackles of the divine axe, and his body seemed to be deformed, with exaggerated muscles bulging out. Under the blessing of the power of the sun, the height of 2 meters has been directly increased to an exaggerated level of 4 or 5 meters. Clenching his fist slightly, explosive power surged out of his body. The air seemed to be ignited by the high temperature. Rhodes looked at the lightning and thunder in the sky. Under the instinct of the world's will, lightning struck the evil god who wanted to get in. Wanted to drive him back. However, when the summoning has progressed to this extent, it is obviously impossible to stop it. 1 minute. Rhodes murmured that the other party was not a true god after all. With his current strength, he is fully capable of solving this problem within a minute. Before he comes, fight back into the abyss. Below the gods, I am invincible. Above the gods, I am invincible. Rhodes' cold eyes were full of confidence. After all, he is carrying the grace of the sun. Boom! The blazing sun exploded in the sky. The blazing flames dispelled the darkness in the entire sky, and the world was once again enveloped in sunlight. Rhodes, holding the divine axe in one hand and standing on exploding flames, appeared beneath the tentacles. The ferocious eyeballs on the evil god's tentacles immediately discovered this bold human being. All eyes turned to Rhodes. Looking at the thousands of ferocious eyeballs, Rhodes moved his shoulders slightly. Time is limited, so I can only deal with you quickly. Rhodes clenched his fingers slightly, and the endless power of the sun poured into the divine axe crazily. The blazing high temperature caused the surrounding temperature to rise to thousands of degrees in an instant. The boiling air waves even distorted the air. Feeling this strong threat, the round eyeballs on the tentacles suddenly opened to their maximum. The huge tentacles fell down. Wherever the tentacles passed, the space was like a broken mirror, with cracks as dense as a spider web emerging. The sun without mercy. Above Rhodes' axe blade, a huge sun slowly condensed and took shape. Colliding with that huge tentacle. At the center of the collision, a blazing light swallowed up everything in an instant. The impact caused by the solar explosion completely dispersed the clouds. When everything calmed down, a shirtless Rhodes emerged unscathed. Although the impact of the collision of the two forces was terrifying, the power of the law of love made him immune to all attacks from those with malicious intent. In comparison, the other party's situation is not so good. In the sky, the tentacles full of eyeballs were half evaporated by the high temperature. The power full of filthy atmosphere dripped and evaporated continuously from the wound, making the surrounding space very unstable. After a brief collision, it was obvious that the other party was at a disadvantage. Give you some more medicine. Magic. Disaster. The magic power of disaster was like a silver cloud, instantly covering the evil god's limbs. The wound on the tentacle that had been half burned suddenly began to deteriorate. Large areas of skin were necrotic, and black pus began to flow from the wounds. The eyeballs on the tentacles seemed to be sick, and they narrowed up miserably. The entire tentacle exudes a sickly gray color. This situation is still rapidly spreading towards the evil god's body. Boom! Bodies were harmed and the tentacle's owner was clearly thoroughly enraged. The vortex in the sky shook violently. One after another, terrifying tentacles covered with suckers and eyeballs emerged from the black hole, trying to expand the area of the black hole. Vaguely, Rhodes could even see the terrifying figure covered in tentacles and over a kilometer in size, about to enter this world. A huge one eye filled with extreme emotions of pain and enjoyment. Pleasure is nothing but vain. Pain is eternal. Praise. Great Lord of Pain. The noisy demonic sound is continuously poured into my mind. It feels like there are tens of thousands of devout believers preaching the glory of God in your ears. Of course, Rhodes sneered at this kind of spiritual bewitchment. Who is he? The king who controls the power of the sun, the incarnation of the sun. Which god in this world is worthy of his faith? Even if the God of glory comes down to earth, he will still blow his brains out. A mere demigod dares to speak of eternity. The muscles on Rhodes's body swelled inch by inch, reaching the limit that his body could bear in the blink of an eye. The terrifying power of the sun pulses in the sharp edge of the divine axe Rita. Even this powerful artifact is somewhat unable to withstand this terrifying power. The skin bursts, and infinite brilliance flows in the blood. The next second, the body was quickly repaired under the influence of the fountain of life. The immortal body and the magic power of the sun are a perfect match. Rhodes couldn't help but sigh. The powerful resilience of his immortal body allows him to control his power without limit. If it were an ordinary person's body, even if it could erupt with such terrifying power, it would suffer irreparable backlash. However, this level of attack alone is not enough to crush this guy to death with one blow. It would be fine if it was an ordinary demigod, but the guy in front of him was an evil god from the bottom of the abyss. The vitality is ridiculously exaggerated. The power that could kill an ordinary demigod could only seriously injure him at most. Rhodes' free hand slowly reached out. Magic. Take by force. Boom. The terrifying magic power surged in, if the magic power of the legendary mage was like a small stream. Then, the magic power of this evil god is like a vast ocean, and there is no limit to it. Indescribable crazy thoughts flooded his brain, and Rhodes used all his will to restrain this maddening power. The evil gods come from the abyss, and the essence of their power is a twisted abyss power. This kind of power is common to abyssal creatures, but it is quite fatal to ordinary people. If it were not for the grace of the power of the sun, both soul and body would be severely polluted. It's a bit forced. Rhodes looked down at his arms. The surface of the skin was cracked inch by inch, and the uncontrollable force wanted to escape control like a wild horse. After finally adapting to the extreme power of the sun, now there is an equally powerful power of the evil god. He was not overwhelmed by these two forces because he was too strong. It was so powerful that even this force, which could severely injure or even kill gods, could not kill him. The two forces merged on the axe blade and turned into a sun as black as ink. The sun falls into a black hole. Silently, everything around him was annihilated and collapsed. Hundreds of terrifying tentacles seemed to be erased from the world the moment they came into contact with the pitch-black light. Evaporate out of thin air. The evil god let out a crazy roar, and his body gradually disappeared amidst the roar like a wild beast. A blow that can make a god fall. Falling sun. Rhodes' hands fell down weakly, and his body returned to normal from its exaggerated enlargement. I looked up at the sky, and before I knew it, the sun at its peak at noon slipped quietly. He also fell from the state of, I am the only one in heaven and on earth. Now, although he has the power to rival the gods, he does not have the power to kill the gods. Fortunately, the goal has been achieved. I originally thought I would just drive them out, but I didn't expect they were killed. Rhodes was also helpless. From the beginning of the battle to the end, it only took him less than 3 strikes to kill the evil god. No more, no less, exactly 1 minute. It's not that this evil god is too weak, it can only be said that his strength is too strong. Immortality, the magic power of robbery, the magic power of the sun. With the blessing of these 3 powers alone, he already has the power to severely injure or even kill gods. If it is the moment when the sun reaches its peak at noon, he is enough to kill gods. Such a pity. The power to kill the gods. He does have this power, but it is only valid for 1 minute. Cooldown time is up to 24 hours. This is how to recharge for a whole day and show off for just 1 minute. In this minute, he can teach the lofty gods to bow their heads and behave like humans. But, a minute later, he was just a mortal who could rival the gods. It's all your fault. Rhodes looked towards the palace below. Because of the aftermath of the battle, most of the palace had been destroyed. The bloody altar and the withered bones on the ground were all exposed to the sun. There was also the pale-faced evil priest dressed in a tailor's outfit. Now she was looking at him with a dead expression. A pair of eyes full of hatred. This guy's heart and soul have been twisted by the power of the evil god, and he has been immersed in it for a long time. Not saved at all. It's better to bury it where it is. A flash of fire appeared on Rhodes' finger. One sun set, raising the entire palace to the ground. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. A dead person should lie down quietly. Or, turn to gray. Too strong. How could there be such a powerful creature in this world? And, still a human. In the hotel, Yulia could not hide the shock on her face after witnessing all this. Others don't know what that thing with tentacles is. Could it be that she, the legendary mage, still doesn't know? Evil god. And he is also a very powerful demigod. There are almost no such terrifying existences even in the imperial capital. No, it is certain that no one can eliminate it. Even the Holy Pope, who is known as the strongest person in the Shinra Empire. Holding artifacts and holy objects can only drive them away. As for killing, unless the most powerful person at the level of gods takes action, only then can a powerful evil god be eliminated. The most terrifying thing about evil gods is their endless and almost immortal vitality. Even the gods can only seal it and cannot completely kill it. What the gods could not do was done by a mortal. Yulia felt a strong impact on her heart. She was actually fighting this kind of monster before. It's a miracle to be alive until now, thinking about it. At the end of the finish, Rhodes slowly landed. As soon as my toes touched the ground, I suddenly felt a pair of scrutinizing eyes. Rhodes tilted his head and looked in the direction of his gaze. The familiar face of Van Helsing appeared in front of him. Also appearing at the same time was an old man wearing red sacrificial robes, and a group of Holy Church believers with wild eyes but no weak momentum. People from the Holy Church. Rhodes just glanced at him, showing no interest in answering. He and Van Helsing only met once, and as for the other people, they had never met. Greet. It's not necessary at all. Rhodes hung the magic axe on his waistband, turned around and walked towards the hotel. Now that the devil and the devil's affairs have been resolved, the ending, although not very happy, is not too bad either. Although the Count's family and everyone in the palace were all sacrificed to the evil god. But, at least the impact of this incident has not continued to expand. Sacrificing a few to save the many is the best way so far. As for whether the Count dies or not, who cares? If it weren't for the pushy Earl of Shabi, he invited this demon tailor to the castle. Today's calamity will never be his turn. People usually go to their homes to invite the god of wealth, but this guy is lucky enough to go to his house to invite the god of death. If he doesn't die, who will? It's a pity for those innocent ordinary people. My lord, please wait a moment. The old man in red sacrificial clothes shouted with a little respect in his tone. The group of Holy Church believers behind them had expressions of shock and disbelief on their faces. With this old man's lofty status in the Holy Church, he would be able to show his dignity when meeting nobles of any status. Even when facing a duke-level noble, he did not dare to show the slightest rudeness to him. Only others have always been in awe of him. Asking others with such a humble tone and a very low attitude can only appear when facing the Pope. The old man looked at Rhodes with an indelible awe in his eyes. The cardinal's status is indeed lofty. Even within the Holy Church, he is the leader at the pinnacle of power. Only the Pope is qualified to override him. With this kind of status, even if you meet the Emperor of the Shinra Empire, you don't need to show much awe. But the person in front of me is an exception. A terrifying existence that can expel or even kill demigod-level evil gods. Even if he is not a god, he has already half-stepped into that sacred and extraordinary realm. This is a great being at the same level as the god of glory they believe in. In front of such a powerful person who can stand shoulder to shoulder with gods, any identity or status is just a joke. Even if the Pope comes in person, he must show enough respect. What's more, he is a little cardinal. Is something wrong? Rhodes tilted his head slightly and asked coldly. I wonder if this lord is interested in joining our holy church to believe in the God of glory. If your lord is willing, the position of chief judge in the holy church is still vacant. The cardinal placed his status quite low, and he was the magistrate of the presiding judge as soon as he opened his mouth. The holy church has 3 major institutions under the Pope. They are the Legion Commander, the Chief Judge, and the Knight Commander. In charge of the Iron Cross Legion, the Judges Legion, and the Punishment Knights Legion respectively. In addition to the 3 major institutions, there are also church leaders such as ascetics, archbishops, and sons. However, in terms of real power and status, the controllers of the 3 major institutions are only inferior to the Pope. The current presiding judge is old and is about to abdicate. At that time, the position of presiding judge will be vacant. If you can win over a strong man who is at least a demigod, he can serve as the presiding judge of the Holy See. For the Holy Church, it is also a great thing. The cardinal was full of confidence. His Majesty the Pope would definitely not refuse such a good thing. Now, just wait for the other party's reply. Believe in the God of radiance. Rhodes raised his eyebrows, his expression unclear whether he was mocking or arrogant. Is there any other God in this world that I am qualified to believe in? Go back and ask your God, is he worthy? In his eyes, God is like cattle and sheep waiting to be slaughtered. When you are in a bad mood, you might just kill it. Make him believe. Is it worthy? Is he worthy of sending one? The God he believed in was insulted, and a flash of sullenness flashed in the cardinal's eyes. But thinking that the person in front of me is probably a powerful being at the level of a god, I feel a little helpless. Can issues between gods and gods be called blasphemy? I feel like it shouldn't count, right? Regardless of whether it counts or not, this dispute between gods is definitely not something that a mortal like him can interfere with. Thanks for watching, subscribe and support my channel.